What's happening, my friends? My name is Nathan, and welcome to Motorcycle Training Concepts. So it doesn't matter how many different ways this question gets answered, because I still get this question. So anybody who has any interest in riding a motorcycle but hasn't bought one yet, maybe they took a BRC or a basic rider course or an MSF course, maybe they ordered all their gear online, now they're just waiting for it to get delivered, which is the fun part, because I guess at this point now you get to do window shopping for motorcycles while you wait, and there's nothing really else you could do. But while you're window shopping for motorcycles, I get a lot of questions about, like, what's the best beginner bike? Where do you start? What do you look for? You can Google it and find a million different opinions out there. So basically what I'm going to add to this discussion is what I wished that I knew whenever I first started looking. Because you can find, 300 cc's, 400 cc's. If you're patient, get a 650. And then take your time. That way you don't outgrow it as fast. What I wish I knew when I first started looking for motorcycles, I'm going to touch on here. And there's 4 things that I broke it down into. So there's budget, whether you want to buy it from a reputable dealer or a private seller, the engine size, which is third for a reason, and then finally aesthetic, because as we'll get into, that's arguably the most important one. So the first one I want to talk about is budget. And I want to talk about that first because for the same principles apply to buying a house. Before you start looking at the really, really nice mansion houses, or let's say $400,000 houses, if your monthly budget can really only afford so much, then you got to start looking at that point. So when it comes to motorcycles, do you have the cash outright to just buy it? And if that's the case, then great. If you don't, do you have the down payment? Do you want to finance it? And if you want to finance it, do you have room in your monthly budget to make that work? So for an example, a Grom being about, $3,000 to $4,000 brand new. If you finance that, it could be about another $100 a month for the loan, averaging, give or take, or wherever you live. And then for insurance, maybe another $100. So maybe on the low end, you're looking at $200 added to finance the cheapest bike on the market. If you have the room in your budget to finance it, that is awesome. If you have the cash outright, that's also awesome. If you can't afford it, then that's why I put this as number 1. Once you figure out your budget, now you want to figure out where you want to buy it from. So I'm going to go ahead and scoot out of the way so that I can make room for the pros and cons list right there. So while that's on the screen, feel free to read it. It's pretty self-explanatory, but it gives you a good idea if you've never done this before. But while it's up there, I'm going to go ahead and talk about my experience with buying motorcycles from both parties. So the first 3 bikes that I bought were from private sellers. And it was fine because I was 17 and I had a job and no bills. And I could really just save up money and buy the bike that I want, which ended up being $2,500 for the first bike, $3,000 for the second bike, $3,500 for the third bike. And basically, I would just buy the bike and I would learn how to do the mechanics to fix whatever that was wrong that the seller didn't tell me about, and then sell it and use that knowledge and the money gained from that to buy my next one. And I was going down that route until it got to the point where honestly I just valued trust and convenience, because scheduling meetups, scheduling like everybody to have like a buddy with them, so there's now like 4 people to work around their schedules for to meet up at this one place. And then you got to meet up, and then you have the really awkward, I don't want to buy your bike. And now you just met up and you wasted their time. And you can kind of imagine how that goes. Basically, after my first 3 bikes, a couple years into riding, I had my first accident, and it was not my favorite thing, if I'm honest. I didn't have a car, so I had to get back to work somehow. So like the day after I wrecked, the bike's gone, my knee's all messed up, and I hobbled into the dealership and I was like, all right, cool, I need another one. And that was my first time in a dealership. And that kind of changed my mind on the whole buying bikes process, because I didn't have to meet with anybody or meet with their buddies or meet with my buddy and have everyone's schedules connect. What happened was they sat me down, they ran some paperwork and came back with some numbers, and it was like, hey, do these numbers look good to you? And I was like, those look manageable to me. I can fit that into my budget. The only downside to the dealerships are that they're higher priced, because the dealer's got to put their name on it. Or if it's a used bike from a dealer, they make sure that it's functional, they make sure that it works, they make sure that it's safe, and they make sure it's reliable. They clean it, they maintain it, they maybe change the tires and the fluids before even selling it to you. If it's a new bike, like they build it for you, they import it, they handle all the back end stuff, they handle your registration for you typically. And sometimes they got rebates and you get some really good deals. Once I went dealers, I stuck to dealers because I'm really tired of the whole secondary market thing. It was great when it started because I learned a lot and it was cheap, but over time, it's just risk versus reward, and I just started to value trust and convenience a lot more for my time and my effort that I was putting into it. I walk into a dealer, I get to sit on something, I get to just basically just apply for a loan and get approved and take it home. So the next thing I want to talk about is engine size. And I kept this one extremely short on purpose. To be fair, you're going to hear a lot of people talking about, okay, 300s are great, 400s are great for beginners. If your ego is real low and maybe you're just like a really patient person, you can get a 650 and then that way you don't outgrow it as fast. And I agree with that to a certain point. You're not considering cost. It's your first bike. The goal is to learn. The goal is to figure out how to ride, learn the fundamentals, learn the road strategy, figure out everything behind it. Commute to work, learn how to do off-road stuff. It doesn't matter. You can do that on a cruiser, off-road, sure. Dirt bike, commute, sounds good to me. Any bike you get's going to get you from point A to point B. You may have your dream bike in mind right now. I know I have my dream bike in mind right now. I don't own my dream bike yet. I'm still on a journey getting there. I'm on bike number 8 now, but I'm working my way there. Your first bike's not going to be it. So don't even consider engine size. My recommendation to anybody is pick a style you like. That kind of gradually moves us from the third one, engine size, and into the fourth one, aesthetic, because engine size doesn't matter. It's all about the style you want. Once you figure out the style that you want, then get the lowest engine size there is there. So you may not even know what style you want yet, and that's perfectly fine because this video is for people who have not ever bought a bike before. If you don't know where to start, I will jump to my notes and I'll throw up my favorite beginner bike from each style that I recognize. So the first one I'm going to bring up is the KLX 300 SM, MSRP of $6,000, so not too shabby for a brand new bike. It's basically just a dirt bike with street tires, and it'll get you where you want to go, and you'll look like a badass doing it. My next one here is the Vulcan S, the cruiser, my favorite beginner cruiser. And I say cruiser very tentatively because I know somebody out there is going to point out all of the sport bike DNA that's in that one and like tell me it's not a cruiser, but it looks like a cruiser, so I'm gonna call it a cruiser, and that's just how it is. But yeah, no, it's MSRP of $7,000. It's got all the sport bike DNA, which I love. That's on my bucket list. I will own one of those. It's not my dream bike, but my garage will feel empty without one. So this one is the entry level to what I'm currently riding. So the Versys X300 is the beginner way into like moto camping. So you got that on-road, off-road, dual purpose, dual sport. Basically, if you've got like this itch to go turn off your cell phone, get away from the internet and just camp for a few days, take a weekend off and just not come into the city for a little while. My next one, just your standard motorcycle experience. So this is the Z400. Cheapest one we've looked at so far, I think. Yeah, so this is the cheapest one we've looked at so far. A sport bike without the windshield and all of the plastic fairings up front. I used to have a Z900 at one point. I had that for like 3 years, and I kind of miss it sometimes when I see other people riding those. I'm like, man, that looks so cool. I want one of those. And I realized I had one of those for a little while. It kind of goes back to that. And that's why I put up the Z400 because it looks sharp. The Ninja 400, which is basically just the the Z400, same engine, same everything. This one here has all of the plastic fairings. Looks like a sport bike because it is a sport bike. A lot of people track these bikes and take them out and do some cool stuff with them. But this one is that beginner entry level. If your dream bike is like a super sport where you want the discipline to be able to ride that on the streets safely, but you want to go to the track and you just want to look cool and have that like cool guy like stuff, that's the one to go with. You can't tell me that's not a cool looking bike. This entire fourth topic is all aesthetics, what looks cool to you, because any of these bikes are going to do exactly what you want to do. You're going to learn on it and you're going to get from point A to point B. That's all these bikes are designed to do. They're all learner bikes, beginner bikes. Now, granted, going back to the Vulcan S, I'm going to have one of those. Any of these bikes that I've shown so far are going to do everything you need them to do and more. Visit a dealership and sit on one. Even if you don't want to finance, you don't have to be like obligated to buy a bike from a dealer to go just visit. And you don't have to schedule an appointment. You just show up and then you go sit on some bikes and you realize, oh, that one's too tall for me, or that one's too short. I look like a monkey on that thing. I look like a monster. Find your style. I threw a bunch of examples. Hopefully that helped. So let me just go back and recap this for anybody who's taking notes. But the first one's budget. You got to do some soul searching. You got to figure out if you can afford it. And if you can't, then don't look at it. Basically, all we're doing this first step is taking this many options and bringing it to like here, because if you can't afford it, we're not looking at it. And that's all budget is. If you have cash, do you not have cash? Do you have a down payment? Can you finance it? Do you want to finance it? Pro tip for this stage though, while you're figuring out these options, and this is your first time doing this, consider your sticker price is not your final price on the bike because you got fees, docking stuff, and all of the taxes that go into that. you can ask your dealer for more information and they'll provide that to you. All right, and then the next one here, real quick, reputable dealer versus private seller. Pros and cons chart, just as a refresh, pause it if you want. Basically, if I were to break it down into like real concise words, private seller is higher risk, but lower prices. And you have to do everything yourself. Reputable dealer is higher prices significantly, but convenient, and you can trust that you're getting a reliable machine and you don't have to do any of the work. Engine size. We don't need to talk about that because, again, we're just lowering the options that you have to choose from. Basically, skip to step 4, find out what your style is, find out what you want. Look up bikes on the internet and find somebody riding one and be like, you know what? I like that style. I can see me riding that one. And then find like the lowest CC you can get at your dealership or a private seller, or find out what's for sale. And then whatever's the lowest CC for the lowest price that can get you the fundamentals you need to learn, do that, because your next bike could be your dream bike. Or if you're like me, and maybe your 9th bike is going to be your dream bike. But I've had a different style of bike every single time, and eventually I'm going to have my dream bike. And I'll save that one for later. But until then, ride safe, be safe, and I'll see you next week.